Good afternoon, ladies and gent. We left off talking last time about how we want to set up our research. Again, my hope and my expectation, no matter what your discipline or field, future career, you're probably going to have to do some level of research in terms of gathering information. Well, does anybody, I asked you all to read a little bit ahead. Was anybody able to get to that? And tell me some of the things that you've understood from what you read from the last time that we met. I don't expect you to have a firm understanding of everything, but just what's your general understanding of some of those concepts? Just a couple moments.
I got you. Let me get my notes.
Try not to look at your notes. Try and answer without looking at your notes.
Okay, so off the top of my head, I remember the first stop after that. We left off at what was it? Jesus, the applied research, and then I can't think of the other word. I can't think of the other word.
Basic research.
Yeah, basic research, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, yeah, I'm on the spot now.
Take your time.
Yeah, basic research. To my understanding, the difference that I made between them, like the basic research again, it's just like research to explain the relationship between two different things, or not necessarily two different things, but two different variables, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then with applied research, I can't remember the specific about it, but more so in the sense that, now I ain't gonna lie, I'm at a loss.
Oh, good.
I'm at a loss.
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Applied research is basically whenever you apply something like to the world, so that way it can like it deals with like social problems or social with a social aspect of things.
Good. And ideally, like in both categories, there's some level of a social relationship that you're going to explore. With applied research, you're trying to use this to actually change things. It's not enough for us just to have this information and have this knowledge. Now that we have this knowledge about the impact of pandemics on mental health, then maybe we can implement some things. And we know that people are suffering, with some mental health issues, which we do. Then maybe there's some things that we can do to help those folks, and that could prevent some mental health episodes, or even the worst case scenario, suicide. Now, the main things that these pages really begin to delve into is how we go about reaching the conclusions that we do in social research, whether it be applied or basic. How do we go about, trying to answer those questions? Does anybody recall what the author said about that? How do we even go about trying to draw these scientific conclusions one way or the
other? Drawing the to get to the answers, basically, right? That's what you're asking.
Mm-hmm.
You make hypotheses, and then you test it with a theory, and then that's kind of how you, again, that entitles collecting data and stuff like that. But that's kind of like the whole process, the scientific method, really.
Good. So that's what I'm looking for mainly, the scientific method. You got this question, you got your hypothesis to what you think may be the answer to the question, and then you want to see what method you're going to use to answer the question. Does anybody recall what were some of the methods that were discussed so far?
Some of the methods are like surveys, and then you do field research.
Those are definitely some methods that we'll focus on. In the early part of chapter 2, what were some of the methods the author described here? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jakira.
I was gonna add, in addition to observation studies, just watching them and stuff.
Okay, good. Open up your Cengage textbooks for me real quick, if you could. Open up. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that if you're able to. I know some of you may be moving around, but otherwise, try to get to section chapter 2 of your Cengage textbook for this class. I'll give you a couple of moments on that. Okay, hopefully again, you can were able to pull this up on your online text. If not, my screen here is being shared. And as always, again, as you read, and we got to do a lot more reading in between classes than we've been doing so far. It's going to pick up tremendously in coming weeks. So make sure that you stay ahead of this. It makes with the lectures a lot more easier to follow. It allows for opportunities for extra credit. And it makes future assignments a lot more easier to complete. And one of the good things about this textbook is that it really kind of gives you an outline of what you're going to be looking at. So it's important that, again, a lot of times, people think that reading is just words passing like across your eyes, because we read together on Tuesday, but that only helps us if we can retain what we actually read. If we read all that stuff and we can remember like what we just read, then we need to acknowledge that that's a problem. And then B, we might need to go back and see our 5th grade teacher, because those are skills that we should master by that point in terms of real reading comprehension. I make light of it, but you got to make an effort to do this. Again, a lot of times people will think that they have accomplished something by reading, but if you read this stuff and you can't tell me what you read, then you need to revisit some of your strategies. The same way, again, if I'm taking a diet for 2 months and I not only have I not lost weight, I've gained some weight, then I need to really investigate the cause and effect of that. So there, again, the cause and effect of reading should be very clear. It'll help us understand the material, because the things that we're going to talk about in coming weeks, Michael, you're not going to understand just by me communicating them to you. So when we talk about, again, refining our ideas, we want to be very clear about how we define and measure our variables. So to test their hypotheses, researchers must always decide how they will define and measure the variables in which they are interested. This is sometimes a straightforward process. For example, if you're interested in comparing how quickly people run a 100-meter dash when alone and when racing against another person, you're all set if you haven't stopped watching runners who can race alone or in pairs. Again, one of the things that, what the author is talking about here, right? What are they trying to find out? How would you try and formulate this in the form of a research question? What they're trying to find out?
You asking how we formulating the question, or you just saying it?
Incorrect. So what is this researcher here? The example I just gave. What are they trying to find out specifically?
Specifically, they're trying to find out how, versus a person running 100-meter was a race or dash, alone versus against other people, basically.
Good. So you can appreciate this, Shakira, that basically, are you going to be faster when you out there practicing on the track by yourself? Or if we get other people actually competing against you, will that make you run faster? What do you think is the answer to that research question, Shakira? We don't know yet, but what do you think? You think they can run faster in the presence of people or when they out there by themselves?
No, definitely. Oh, well, I would say for me, definitely in the presence of people, because they push you, your momentum to go further.
Good, absolutely. So again, we see this. Do y'all think that that's only true of racing and running?
No.
I also
want many other things.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Shakira.
You good.
I was gonna add that it's not necessarily with running, but that's just a us thing, period. Like, we're not gonna allow anyone else to, beat us in something, because then that kind of messes with our ego. Then we start to think is that person better than me, and things of that nature. So I just wanted to add that.
Good. Now, do you think that all people have that psychology?
Not really.
No.
Right. There are some individuals that, again, may not be that competitive. And it's like, look, it ain't that serious. If you want to go ahead and win a race, Shakira, go ahead. So keep these things in mind. But you're right that studies have shown that whether it be racing and it doesn't always have to be competition per se. What it speaks to is that the presence of other people affects our performance in all types of things. But we'll look at this more deeply in a moment. Ryan, what's your question or comment?
Oh, no, I was just saying that, it could be applied to many other things just besides racing, even in the workplace, whether you're working on a project by yourself or, you're simultaneously working on a project, but, you feel as if your boss is going to look at what you did or what you contributed versus to what somebody else contributed. So it's kind of like, maybe I want to, go over the little extra edge to, make a good impression like that.
Okay, good. So the main things that we're looking at here, right, is important that you understand what they're trying to find out. So Ron explained to you again, they're trying to find out very simply, is your speed affected by when you're running alone compared to when you're running against us with other people. So to measure this is very simple here. You need a stopwatch, and we'll have like, okay, Jakir, go out here and run it now by yourself. This 100-meter dash. If we're trying to find this out, are we going to probably, do you think we should only have her do it once?
Nah, you got to do it more than once.
No, you got to keep going.
Good. So we want to have her do it a few times because maybe she just got off to a bad jump one time and it's not her true time. Maybe she had just eaten lunch and she's feeling a little sluggish. So we might want to do it a few different times under different conditions to make sure that it's not the lunch or the rainy track that's making her run this way, but it's the presence of other people. So we want to be very clear, because if we don't set up our research correctly, Michael, in the beginning, we can end up reporting results that may not really be accurate. So many other times, however, the process is a lot less straightforward, Maisha. For example, imagine you are interested in studying the effects of mood on altruistic. Altruistic means helpful behavior. Imagine you're interested in studying the effects of mood on altruistic behavior. It sounds simple, right? But wait, you need to step back and ask yourself, what do I mean by mood? How would I measure or manipulate it? What do I mean by altruistic behavior? You're going to need to be very clear in defining these concepts, and there may be countless ways that you can do it. So one of the things that you want to think about as we go forward, and that I'll help you with, is which ones you should pick. So we say we're going to measure aggression. In my research model, I have to be very specific with what I mean by aggression. A lot of times people hear aggression and they think of like, okay, violence or something like that, this little kid is really aggressive. He's always pushing and fighting people. But you can be an aggressive salesperson. Again, if you're working at a shoe store, Michael, your after-school job in high school, an aggressive salesperson, that's not violent, is it? It's like as soon as somebody comes to the store, Ron up there, he all shy and timid. Michael's on, hey, may I help you? Hey, may I help you? Hey, what's going on? Hey, man, those shoes look great, but you know what really look good? So that's a form of aggression. We got to be very clear what we mean by that. Maybe again, Maisha saw a cute boy. She's a little shy and bashful and stuff. Jakira gonna go over there and spit her game. That's a form of aggression. So whatever our variable is, we have to be very clear and specific. And again, there are usually no wrong answers about this, Michael. You just got to be able to explain why you used the measure that you did, and you got to be consistent with it throughout the pace of the research. So the speed on a 100-meter dash, what are we going to use to measure that? Jakira, you probably know better than anybody. How are we going to measure it? Like in what unit are we going to measure?
Seconds. Are you measuring the 100 meters by seconds with your stopwatch?
Good, and you probably even go to milliseconds. And we ain't.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
Right, because we ain't just gonna say 4 seconds and 5 seconds. It's like, nah, she ran a 4.37. I ran a 4.12, and if you did that, you're super fast, obviously. But you know what I'm saying. So keep this in mind. Again, whatever your topic is, you want to be very clear with your measurement. Let's continue on. When a researcher first develops a hypothesis, the variables are typically in abstract general form. These are conceptual variables. Examples of conceptual variables, Jakira, include prejudice, conformity, attraction, love, group pressure, and social anxiety. So these are variables, and one of the things I want you to make note of that, Michael, is that it's a little bit more difficult to measure that. You may have seen, Michael, that, hey, I'm attracted to this female more than this female. We've all experienced that, correct? But how do you measure it? Let's think about it. How could you measure attraction? No wrong answer. We're going to talk about this later on. There's a whole chapter devoted to it.
You talk about like attraction towards a person or attraction just in general?
To another person, a member of the opposite sex.
Well, like I feel like if you're attracted to another person, it's just how that person makes you feel. Like it can be how they look, how their personality are, whether they can make you laugh, whatever the case may be. All that just kind of adds together and how it makes you feel about them.
Okay, good. Ron Anderson, I think you had a hand up.
I feel as if you can measure that attraction based on, you know, how willing you are to do something for them, let alone how much you actually do for them versus somebody else.
Okay. Okay, good.
I
Other
got a
thoughts?
comment.
Maisha Hayesworth.
I think you can measure attraction basically like by how much that you show of yourself. Like you don't give everybody the same amount of yourself, so to say, you know. So if you're really attracted to somebody, you're really interested in them knowing you and you knowing them.
Okay, good. As you all showed there are many different ways you can measure it, right? Whatever the case may be, you would have to be really clear about that. So I'm going to show y'all something now. You cannot share this with anybody. I'm giving y'all some really private discretionary stuff here, but it's relevant to my point. Many years ago, Jakira, I began to wonder, like, again, like, you know, we like certain women, we become attracted to them for different reasons, but sometimes they may not always make sense. You're like, damn, I knew this girl was crazy for the job. Like, why did I keep, like, what the hell, like, am I choosing these women? So I had to take a step back, Maisha, and kind of like, you know, like, all right, look, what are the different traits that you're looking for? So don't judge me too harshly. I divided a bit of a chart. And this chart is it's weighted, meaning that certain things have different values. So here are some ways that I measure, not necessarily attraction, but compatibility. For me, your list, Ron, may be totally different. So she's gonna have to have some book smarts. Can y'all see this chart? Street smarts, she gotta be able to dress. It really helps if she like hip hop. Like again, we're gonna have to get out on the floor sometimes and stuff, Jakira. So you gotta be like in the dance. And we going out and everything, and you trying to hold up the wall, that's gonna be tough. Gotta have your own money, dog. You know, I don't mind, you know, again, taking you out, but you better be bringing your own paper to the table. Definitely an advantage, my age if she ain't got no kids. Gotta have her own career quite clearly at this age. I'm not overly religious myself, Michael, so if she expecting me to be going to church with her every Sunday, that's probably not gonna be a good one. She's gonna have a college degree. I need her to be able to have a conversation about politics. Having her own hair is kind of important. I ain't gonna say she can't wear makeup, but I don't want to be like a clown and no shit like that. Liking sports, pro-black. She got pretty feet, Jakira. That definitely does help. Ain't gonna front. If she could cook, publicly affectionate, likes to read, and it's a lot. Then we get into other things. You know, her physique, her level of
You went past some of them real fast.
Right, he got a lot on
Nah, nah, you gotta go back. Nah, you passed the good ones probably. Nah.
It smell good. Got strong professional networks. Got a nice car. Good conversation. I haven't looked at this in a while. This is pretty interesting, actually. Good listener. Ambitious.
Who are you trying to build?
What'd you say?
This man is trying to build a woman.
Like,
now look here, Maisha. I know that everybody's not going to have all of these traits. So y'all,
but you got a lot of them to pick from.
True. Some of them are going to be a little bit more important than others. So respecting my privacy. Ease my self-expansion. Like she got to be able to help me grow in some way. Like, what can I learn from you, baby girl? Teach me something. So these again, so look, I try and put them in very particular way. This is, as Maisha has alluded to, this ain't no perfect measure. I know that. But I try and find some way, as opposed to me going out here randomly on my own and just what I think I like, let me put through this to some type of quantifiable measure. As we see with my list here, Jakira, it is not a perfect list by any means. Your list and what you try and measure may not be perfect, but you just want to be consistent with it. A couple more things, and then I'm going to pass off the mic to y'all. And keep all this in mind. Like, I'm not just sharing this with y'all for fun and games. We're going to talk about this and unpack this a little bit more in a moment. So what I just described there are operational definitions, but some, like, if we're talking about how fast you're running, Jakira, that's easy to measure. If we're talking about the effects of a new diet, that's easy to measure. If we want to look at the correlation between education and income, we can measure that through, again, your annual salary. But things like love and group pressure and attraction and conformity, those are more difficult to measure, Michael, but not impossible. So the specific way in which a conceptual variable is manipulated or measured is called the operational definition of the variable. Part of the challenge and fun of designing research in social psychology is taking an abstract conceptual variable such as love or group pressure and deciding how to operationally define it so to manipulate or measure it. Again, like we believe that we can determine of all the women you may have loved before, Ron, we can measure which one you love the most. We believe we can measure which parents you love the most. Again, everybody says, I love my parents equally. Hey, you probably got a favorite too. The same way, again, I know I hate to break this to y'all. Your parents definitely got a favorite, man. I ain't got no kids, but I got a lot of friends who do, and they be telling me, like, man, I can't stand my fucking Michael fucking bitch ass. Like, you know, they're like, I've heard like comments like almost like that. Like, man, I love Michael, man, but shit, he's fucking soft, man. This little 4-year-old ass be crying about everything. Now, Jakira, that's my dog. She a G. Like, yeah, so yeah, people be talking about their kids like that behind y'all backs all the time. Sorry. So again, from this picture, right, and again, look at some of the images and sidebars themselves, that we can guess that the boy sitting by himself on the playground is lonely. But how do researchers precisely define and measure conceptual variables such as loneliness? How much, again, I asked y'all about, you know, love and romance and attraction. How much you measure loneliness? How can we say that I'm way lonelier than all of y'all? How can we measure that? No wrong answers, but what do you think? Tell me something.
I mean,
go ahead.
Michael.
I mean, I guess you can measure it like, say for instance, maybe like a Friday or something like that. Like, you know, this person might be going out, and this person might be hanging with their friends, and then the other person, they might be like just at the house by themselves, not doing nothing. Or look at the amount of friends somebody might have. Or
all right, now we get somewhere. I like that one. Amount of friends that somebody has. So we can count, like, because even though, Michael, it is difficult for us to put a number on this, when I'm asking y'all these questions, I want you to think about it almost in a numeric way. So one way, and again, is it a perfect way? Because again, there may be people who got a lot of friends that may still be lonely. So me and Michael know it's not perfect, but it's also not unreasonable to measure it that way, right? So one way we can measure loneliness is just we ask a person, how many people do you consider a close friend? Good. Aisha, I think you had something to chime in with. How we can measure loneliness?
I was going to say, like, measuring social interactions, like meaning how many times they go out with people, or like what do they do in their free time?
Excellent, really good. Measure social interactions. So like, okay, so how many times did you go out this weekend? How many times did you go to the mall? How many did you go to the basketball game? So good, we can measure social interactions. Any other ways?
The first thing that came to mind was specifically like time, how much time you spend alone versus spending with other people.
Excellent. Really good. So again, I spent, you know, if there were 72 hours, you know, this weekend, I spent 65 hours by myself compared to, you know, Ron, who spent 5 hours by himself. Jakira McLeod.
I was going to mention, even if you are on social media or whatever social, you know, preference you prefer, I will watch out for the things that you post, because usually sometimes you have people who are, you know, posting things that they actually feel, and then it could be times where they're not, but it's still something that can be tested.
Excellent, Jakira. What you just described there is qualitative research. So what I've been asking for when I be asking about numbers, that's quantitative, where we put things in numbers, Ron. Again, you're going to hear this in your statistics class. Numbers. But sometimes that doesn't really capture the essence of the relationship you're trying to explore. So if I tell you that, hey, like, you know, Ron had 100 posts today and Michael had 100 posts on Facebook today, that seems like they're both pretty active, right? But it doesn't tell me anything about what exactly they're posting. So if Ron is posting a whole bunch of things about, you know, life is good and God is great, and Michael is posting a whole bunch of dark, macabre stuff like I don't really feel love, Nobody really gets me. We need to look at that, and we're going to talk about those things in more detail. Take careful notes as y'all go through this. As always, the lecture is being recorded. It may not feel like it at the time, but you all are getting a lot of teaching lessons that are going to help you, that I really encourage you to pull from later on, and that will help you understand some of the things that you're going to be tested on. Because again, I'm not going to test you on how do we measure attraction. I'm not going to test you on how we measure loneliness. I am going to test you on how we measure conceptual variables. So this exercise where you're getting some real world examples, hopefully will help with that. Ron Anderson. Oh, damn, Ron got kicked out. My bad, Ron. So imagine, for example, Maisha, one is to conduct a study on the effects of alcohol intoxication on aggression. Have y'all ever seen any correlation between those variables? All right,
yes.
Again,
Yeah.
most research just goes from what people observe. So you may see, Maisha, that every single weekend your homegirl gets scummy drunk and she's trying to fight everybody in the club. Girls, boys, bouncers, everybody. Come out trying to fight little old ladies on the street. And it only happens when she gets drunk. But you may wonder, okay, is this just my friend, or does everybody behave this way? So you have observed something in society and you wonder if there's a relationship between those variables. So imagine wanting to conduct a study on the effects of alcohol intoxication on aggression. Not alcohol consumption, Jakira. Again, I can have a drink and I can be cool. We're looking at intoxication specifically. Again, that word is very important. If you just say, so alcohol consumption versus alcohol intoxication, change the focus of your research a great deal. One of the conceptual variables might be whether or not participants are intoxicated. There are several ways, Shakira, of measuring this variable. And our variable, again, is intoxication, most of which are relatively straightforward. For instance, one researcher might operationally define intoxication as when a participant has a blood alcohol level of 0.10 or more. Again, hopefully you never have to find this out. I've had some friends who've had to. The police will let you know when this level is reached. You may be like, hey, but I don't feel drunk. This number right here, Maisha, says that you are. I don't know what to tell you, dog. You're going to jail. Whereas another might define it as when a participant says that he or she feels drunk. Again, it's been all types of times where like, look, you don't feel drunk, but if you take that breathalyzer, Michael, I don't know what to tell you, dog. A second conceptual variable is this study would be aggression. Again, you're trying to look at the level between intoxication and aggression. Measuring aggression in experiments is particularly difficult because of ethical and practical issues. That, like, again, and we'll talk about this, I'll suppose y'all, and I'll do this in a moment. That, y'all recall this, I'm sure everybody on here, right, has heard of the Tuskegee experiment. Can anybody walk me through it very briefly? What happened with the Tuskegee experiment?
Basically, what happened was researchers came together and they manipulated Black people to believe that they were receiving free health care, but in turn, they was injecting them with syphilis to see the effects of syphilis.
No, not fully. That, like, it was definitely related to syphilis. What it turned out, Maisha, is they actually had a cure to syphilis by this point. They had a cure. They could have gave the cure to the white men and saw how the drug responded on them and helping them cure their syphilis. For the Black people, they wanted to see how the disease developed over time. What does it look like at this stage of syphilis? Okay, what does it look like at this stage? What does it look like at this stage? So the same way, like we do that now, right? Like, you know, with different drugs and stuff, but what do we usually use when we try and, like, before we put a drug out to the market, how do we test it if it's gonna have any kind of negative side effects? Who do we use for those experiments?
We'll have animals.
Yeah.
Yes, good. And there are a lot of questions, Mike, here, or is it Ron? I couldn't hear, but there is a lot of debate about Ron about whether or not we should do that either. However, we don't allow those kind of things to be done on humans at all. And it's because of things like the Tuskegee experiment. So in this way, Maisha, it would be we will have to question the ethics of, like, okay, look, I want to do a research on, like, you know, intoxication and aggression, on a relationship between those variables. I'm going to have Michael and Ron get really intoxicated, and I'm going to observe how they behave. So it would be unethical, Maisha, for you to stimulate this environment, and then for you to sit up there and study and research as Michael is up here beating the hell out of somebody, and you up there taking notes. Okay, interesting. Wow. Damn, Mikaela's really angry. Like, no, you're supposed to break it up, Maisha. You ain't supposed to be like, you're like, again, your job is to study research, not to create it. So you don't want to create a situation where Mikaela is going to behave violently in a way that he would not have had you not introduced this variable into the research. So you can't do research that's going to harm people. You can't do research that's going to harm people. So keep this in mind. Well, let me be, yeah, well, no, I was right with my wording. I was going to say, I was going to correct it, but I said people. Now we can harm animals, lab rats, monkeys. We do that stuff all day, but we are not allowed to do research like that to harm human beings. And there are many people at PETA, that's an organization that is the lobbying group that's designed to protect the rights of animals. There are many people who don't think that should be done either. So it'd be like organizations sometimes, they'll break into a lab, Jakira, and they let all the animals out. Like, fuck your research, motherfucker. Free the lions. Anyway, continuing on. I'm sorry, Ron.
Just a random thought, but you say, they'll break into a lab and let animals out, right? Mm-hmm. But then it's like, damn, what if that animal got, with this random ass strain of corona that you just released into the wild? Like,
but great point. Yes, great question. So measuring aggression in experiments, Jakira, is particularly difficult because of ethical and practical issues. Researchers can't let participants in their studies attack each other. And I got you 1 second. Researchers interested in measuring aggression are thus often forced to measure relatively unusual behavior, such as administering shocks, blasts of noise, or even hot sauce to another person as part of a specific task. Often there's no single best way to transform a variable from the abstract, conceptual, to the specific. There's no best way to do it. A great deal of trial and error must be involved. So sometimes, Jakira, you might decide like, you know what, I'm gonna measure aggression this way. And be like, you know what? It didn't really account for this and this and that. Okay, so let me do this. Damn, that wasn't really what I was looking for. So let me do this. Hey, I forgot about considering this. So like, that happens, that's okay. That's part of the process. You go through a whole bunch of trial and error, much like we do in life, right? Often there's, again, so a great deal of trial and error must be involved. However, sometimes there are systematic statistical ways of checking how valid various manipulations and measures are. And researchers spend a great deal of time fine-tuning their operational definitions to best capture the conceptual variables they wish to study. Thank you for your patience, Ms. McLeod.
I wanted to make a point as far as like researchers who pay people to do certain vaccines or like just certain, things that they're testing out, like test dummies in a way.
Good, yeah, excellent point there. Yes, that since there are some risks to getting involved in research, there are some things where we need to know where it's like, okay, look, we can't, testing this vaccine on this monkey ain't gonna really help us. We need to know how this works on human beings. So yes, they will pay people, and they know it's a risk involved, so they will pay you to participate in their studies, making you aware of the different risks. And generally by that point, Jakira, they should make sure, like, look, we're pretty sure that, it ain't gonna be no risk, but we need to find out for sure. And in that way, the participants have some legal protections if anything does go haywire. Can somebody pick up where I left off? Researchers evaluate. Anybody at all?
I got you. Researchers evaluate the manipulation and measurement of variables in terms of their construct validity. Construct validity refers to the extent to which the manipulations in an experiment really manipulate the conceptual variables they were designed to manipulate, and the measures used in a study, experimental or otherwise, really measure the conceptual variables they were designed to measure.
Good. So keep in mind, right, what this speaks to very simply, and take notes again, this is a part where when you read this at the crib, Maisha, that this may be something that I might expect you not to fully grasp as you read it. And what I need y'all to be doing is to read this stuff at home so we can use our time more efficiently, and then bring your question to class for everybody, and I can break this stuff down. What this basically speaks to, right, is that in answering your research question, Jakira, you want to make sure that you set it up right, because if you don't set it up right, your data may show something that is really not accurate. So for example, and I see 2 hands up, I got y'all 1 second. You may do research on the relationship between ice cream sales and violence. And you may get a lot of data around that says, like, man, ice cream sales are really going up over the summer. But you know what? Crime is going up as well. This proves that ice cream causes people to commit more crime. But in reality, your research question was flawed from the beginning. What is a variable that is related to both ice cream sales and crime in this case? What do you think is a variable, which I didn't put in my research question? But what's the main variable that's impacting both things?
That time period, the summer in general. Like, yeah, summer.
Good. Yeah, excellent. It ain't even necessarily warmer weather. Warmer weather, like people do buy more ice cream in warmer weather, but the main thing with crime is that in the summertime, it's a lot more young people with a lot more free time. Like that's the main thing more than anything else. Before I got into that, I saw a couple of hands up. What was your question or comment before Michael continues on? What was the question or comment?
That first point for construct validity. Can we go over that? Because again, that was a lot of manipulations in that sentence, and I just want to make sure that I got it correctly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna read it again. Construct validity refers to the extent which one, the manipulations in an experiment really manipulate the conceptual variables they were designed to manipulate. And then it goes into the next part. So my understanding.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So the manipulations in an experiment, right? I see that as, things that are changed in an experiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
They really manipulate or they really affect, what they were meant to, like, kind of basically like they're doing their job. That's how I interpreted it. But yeah.
That you are exploring, what it speaks to is that you're trying to test if there's a relationship between variables. You need to make sure that your experiment is really measuring the relationship between those two, and it's not really like manipulating something else, or you're explaining something else. So whether it be where I'm trying to, I want to see what is the relationship between ice cream sales and crime. But before I do that, I need to make sure that I have that there is really a relationship between those two things. Otherwise, my final experiment is going to be faulty. I'm going to show some examples of this, and I think will make this even more clear in a moment. And this will be something, Ron, I want to warn you in advance. We're going to go over many times.
Okay.
Go ahead with the second point.
Okay. So number 2, and the measures used in the study, experimental or otherwise, really measure the conceptual variables they were designed to measure. So with that first explanation, the first part, so basically saying, you are measuring what you're supposed to be measuring and not something else that's not relevant to it. Basically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what are some different, so we could measure love in many different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if we set it up like that we're going to see the relationship between how many things your boyfriend purchased you, Kira, and the amount of love. Maybe there's a relationship between them two variables. Not always. So that research, you could just be, what you're actually presenting is how much money this person has. Yeah. Your broke boyfriend, he might have loved you way more. He just couldn't afford as much at that time, Jakira. It wasn't his fault. Hard times out. It's hard out here for a pimp. So we want to be clear. And again, I use this nonsensical example, but we want to be very clear about what we're measuring. I'm going to come to so did we talk about the Hawthorne effect in here?
Hawthorne, no.
All right, I'll come back to that in a moment. But good questions. Again, if it's not fully clear, be patient with me. I got you. I think I saw another hand up as well.
I'm not
questions? Okay. If any other questions do come to mind, let me know. We're going to continue on a little bit more here. Go ahead, Michael. All right, so look. This is the part when I asked at the beginning of the class, the different methods. Now we are going to unpack some of the methods that we got this research question. We want to be very careful about how we design it. Michael's going to break down some of the ways that we do that. Go ahead, Michael.
All right. Social psychologists measure variables in many ways, but most can be placed in one of the 2 categories, self-reports and observations. We discuss each of these methods in the next sections, along with how advances in technology are enabling social psychologists to measure variables in new ways.
So does anybody recall, we said, right, we can measure if somebody's intoxicated. The author just said there are 2 ways that you can look at that. What were the ways again?
Self-reports and observations.
Wait, now we were very specific.
The alcohol scale, the point.
Yeah, the blood intoxication.
Oh yeah.
And then what was good? And what was the other way?
When by saying whether the person was like, oh, what did it say? I can't remember.
Aggression.
Wait, say it again.
Aggression.
Nope. How do we measure if there? So the author said that there were two ways that we could measure if somebody was intoxicated.
There was a blood alcohol
about 5 minutes ago.
The blood alcohol level and
correct.
Oh, when they say they feel drunk.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So one, I can observe your blood alcohol level. I can see it. Like, look, you're telling me, Michael, that you ain't drunk, but I see right here, dog. Not only is your blood alcohol over 0.10, you were like 0.37, dog. You've been drinking since like 11 o'clock this morning, man. What are you telling me? So I can observe this. Others, right? I can ask you, hey, are you drunk? So observations and self-reports. I can observe for myself. I don't have to take your word for it. You're telling me you ain't drunk. Again, like, so y'all be telling me, yeah, yes, I read. What am I observing, dog? What am I observing? What am I observing? The self-report is when I ask you, have you read? Yes, I read. Okay. But that observational study is going to be coming up real quick, Ron. Ain't no telling when that pop quiz may come up. I make light of this, right? But this is how we get most information about, human beings. We can ask them in surveys, but as you see there, right? Sometimes, Mike, just sometimes now, people don't be telling the fucking truth. So the best way to get is scientific information is to observe for ourselves. Do your own research, man. People lie about all types of, and many times people are not even intending to lie. Let's look at self-reports in more detail. Go ahead, Michael.
Collecting self-reports in which participants disclose their thoughts, feelings, desires, and actions is a widely used measurement technique in social psychology. Self-reports can consist of individual questions or sets of questions that together measure a single conceptual variable. For example, one popular self-report measure, the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, consists of a set of questions that measures individuals' overall self-esteem. Respondents are asked the extent to which they agree with statements such as, I feel that I have a number of good qualities, and all in all, I am inclined to feel that I am a failure. The scale, first developed by Morris Rosenberg in the 1960s, continues to be used today in a wide variety of settings and countries around the world because many researchers consider it to have a good construct validity.
Now hold fast, Michael. Now, when I'm asking y'all about methods, self-reports are a category of methods. A specific method is a Rosenberg self-esteem scale. So there are many different types of self-reports that we're going to talk about. So one is a Rosenberg self-esteem scale. And again, right, it's very important that we're clear about what we're trying to measure. This scale is not about measuring like your intelligence. We got other tests for that. It's not about measuring like how generous you are. We got other scales for that. This is specifically designed to measure your self-esteem. Continue on, Michael.
Self-reports give the researcher access to an individual's beliefs and perceptions, but self-reports are not always accurate and can be misleading. For example, the desire to look good to ourselves and others can influence how we respond. This is evident in the results of research using the bogus pipeline technique, a procedure in which... Go
ahead, I'm sorry.
A procedure in which participants are led to believe that their responses will be verified by an infallible lie detector. When participants believe their lie...
I'm sorry, hold fast, Michael. So one of the things as a researcher, right, that when you're asking people, when you're doing self-reports, again, like if I ask you to self-report, hey, did y'all read today? Most people just want to make themselves look good, man. They don't want to get the negative consequences for having not read. So people will say, yeah, of course I read. Yes, of course, sure. Of course, no, of course I've never cheated on my wife. No, of course I've never used drugs before. Of course I've never cheated on my taxes. So people, of course I'm not racist. No. Yes, I voted for Trump both times, but no, I'm not racist at all. And I don't want to suggest that everybody who's racist voted for Trump. But what I will say, Maisha, that everybody who's racist definitely voted for Trump. Listen to the words there. It's very important. But we have to be sure. Again, and when you're asking people information, is you can never be fully sure. You will have to be with them every single moment to be able to explore the full veracity of what they're saying. But there are ways where you can construct your self-report, Ron, where you can still you can guard against the lie. You know people are going to be dishonest. It's not, again, this ain't always a malicious thing. Don't mean that they're bad people. You can design your survey in a way that protects against that. We'll talk about that later on. So again, if people think like, okay, look, Ron, I'm going to give you this survey, right? And I got this lie detector here, so make sure that you're truthful with your responses. Continue on, Michael.
When participants believe their lies will be detected, they report facts about themselves more accurately and endorse socially unacceptable opinions more frequently. The bogus pipeline is, in fact, bogus. No such infallible device exists, but belief in its powers discourages people from lying.
Good. So I sit this machine on the desk, and I'm like, look, Michael, this lie detector is going to be able to detect if you're dishonest, so make sure that you're truthful. In reality, Ron, that machine doesn't do anything at all. Like it's an old fax machine from like 1973. But if you believe it, it's going to affect your actions. Keep in mind, this is a psychology class that something doesn't have to be real. If you believe it's real, the consequences themselves can be real. Hold your point. Let me let Michael get through a little bit more, and perhaps some of your questions may be answered. Don't lose your thoughts, though. Self-reports are what, Michael?
Self-reports are also affected by the way that questions are asked, such as how they are worded or in what order or context they are asked.
Good. It's one thing, right? So a lot of faculty will say like, hey, my students have read because they asked, hey, did you read today? Yes, I read. Hey, that proves that they read. My question would be a little bit different, Michael. Tell me about what you read. You understand how that's different? Like, so this is different, Ron. Like, hey, have you been cheating on me, girl? No. There's some other questions that could maybe help you get some more information, homie. Keep this in mind. Because again, right, I'm talking about this for social research, but this is just in general in dealing with human beings. That many of you all are giving misinformation all the times just because you don't even know what questions to ask. Give me a little bit more, Michael.
For instance, although global warming and climate change mean the same thing to most Americans, Jonathan Schultz and others found that Republican but not Democratic respondents to a survey in the United States were much less likely to indicate that they believe in the issue if it was referred to as global warming rather than climate change. In another study, a large majority, 88% of participants indicated that they thought condoms were effective in stopping AIDS when condoms were said to have a 95% success rate. However, when condoms were said to have a 5% failure rate, which is merely another way of saying the same thing, less than half, 42% of the participants indicated that they thought condoms were effective. More recently, Erica Hall and others.
Because it is important to make sure, again, don't just get through the information quickly. Make sure you understand what's being said there. This is really important. What he's saying here, Maisha, the same information. How the researchers word the questions can change responses. I told you before, Ron, that most psychologists go work for corporations. And one of the things that they understand is, how do I present this information? Because I can ask you a question and present this information in a certain way to fulfill my goals that oversee yours. A little bit more, Michael.
More recently, Erica Hall and others found in one study that white Americans estimated a man's salary as significantly lower, and in another study felt more negatively toward a criminal suspect if the man was identified as Black rather than African American.
So again, you look at a survey and people are getting the psychology of this, right? That you look at, because people don't know that they're doing this stuff most of the time. I told you last time, right, that even though we have debunked many of Freud's theories, one of the more important ones is the subconscious. So there's so many things in our subconscious. So like we respond differently from the word Black to African American. Just something small as that. A little bit more, Michael.
There are theoretical explanations that can account for the seemingly irrational results reported in these studies. But the point here is that subtle factors can have significant effects on the attitudes and opinions that people report.
Now let's look at the data itself, right? Again, I told you we want to put these concepts in numbers. Read this figure 2.1. Again, there will be temptations, Ron, to get through the reading quickly because our main goal is to read it fast, right? To skip over boxes and charts like this that will help you with your understanding. But I strongly encourage you to look at this. And one of the things I want you to make note of, right, is we're zooming through this. How long is taking us to read this stuff? It's not taking us very long at all. So we need to do a little bit better job of reading in between classes. It's not going to be terribly time consuming. And you might actually go through the accident of learning something in the process. Continue on, Michael. Read this box for me real quick, and then we're going to see what Ryan has to say.
Although most Americans think of Black and African American as the same thing when identifying the race of someone, a 2015 experiment found that white American participants estimated someone's salary as significantly lower, graph on top, and had more negative reactions to a suspected criminal, graph on bottom, if the individual was identified as Black rather than African American.
So they looking at this like, oh man, if this dude is Black, then his salary got to be way lower than them African Americans. Oh, these Black criminals are like, yeah, the Black criminals are way more dangerous than African Americans. Shit, I better watch out for them. Again, same thing, but we see different results. And are we giving this survey to like 2 or 3 people? No, to make these conclusions, you got to give it to hundreds and thousands of people. Ron Anderson, you've been very patient.
Kind of touching back on the bogus pipeline technique, right? Mm-hmm. When we was talking about it, it's like, yo, isn't that the placebo effect, low key?
Excellent.
Yes. It's same thing, based pretty much.
Absolutely. What is the placebo effect for any of your classmates that may be unfamiliar?
The placebo effect, again, is that, basically, the way I explained it, I remember it, was based on that one experiment with the sugar pill. Like, hey, this pill is going to reduce or have this going to fix this issue, right? You're going to get way better sleep with this pill. Whereas it's just a sugar pill. So they give half the people the pill, and then they give half the people like just the regular sugar pill. And then it's a lot of people that, just took the regular pill that wasn't medicine. It's like, yeah, I feel these effects. I feel great. My sleep is great. But it's just like, that's because you believe it. Like, you internalize it. So your body produces results, basically.
Excellent. Very well explained. And again, what this speaks to is how incredibly powerful the mind is. We be playing tricks on ourselves all the time. So be mindful about that. But the more you're aware of it, and again, there are some cases where those mental tricks can be very helpful. There are some times where they can be destructive. Can somebody pick up where Michael left off in the reading? Very good, Ron Anderson. Indeed, even the exact same question.
I'll pick up. Okay. All right. Right after the chart, right? Okay. Yep. Indeed, even the exact same question can elicit very different responses depending on the context in which the question occurs. For example, all individuals contacted in one survey were asked how important the issue of skin cancer was in their lives. But this question was asked either before or after a series of questions about other health concerns. Even though the wording of the question was identical, respondents rated skin cancer as significantly more important if the question was asked first, if it came after, asked first, than if it came after other health questions. And in another example of the impact of the previous questions, Kimberly Rios Morrison and Adrienne Chung found that white college students indicated significantly less support for multiculturalism if they had earlier marked their race/identity as white on a questionnaire than if the questionnaire used the term European American instead.
Good.
Can I make a point real quick?
You sure can.
We was talking about that in statistics. Like, you ask a certain question, because you can ask a question. It could be a yes or no question, a neutral, somewhat agreed, strongly. This, how the usually questionnaires go. And I always thought, like, based on like the first question, the questions that come first, it'll really change the answer. Because again, like the question that we had was, what was the question? It's in the topic of student confidence on campus, right? And matter of fact, basically we were talking about, damn, what's the street? Right in front of the girls and boys dorm, right? We was just looking at, the activity there. Why do people hang out outside? And then it was kind of like, well, one reason can be, they don't really allow co-ed visitations. That could be a reason, which, may be the reason, but that might not be the main reason. They might just have no place to hang out. Mm-hmm. So, but the question that came before that was like, what do you believe of co-ed? Like they brought up co-ed visitation before they asked that question, like why you're out there, which I felt like, if you mention co-ed visitation and then you ask, why are you outside? It's kind of like, well, we don't got co-ed visitation. Whereas if that wasn't the first thing, that probably wouldn't have came to mind, truthfully. Good. Yeah, but that was just the point I wanted to make.
Good. So yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Maisha Hayesworth.
I just had wanted to make sure I had got something right, but I reread it. I got it. Because I was going to say, yeah, I got it.
You sure?
Yes, I was just making sure I read it right because the book said that when the students labeled themselves white, they were less supportive of multiculturalism, but when they referred to themselves as European American, they were more supportive of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And just something like that where white, okay, well, I'm just white. European American, oh, I'm part of multiculturalism.
Yeah.
So just those little mental tricks again, like, and in this way, right, this is, so when people are skeptical of information, it's not always the information that you should be skeptical of. What you need to unpack, Jakira, is how they unpack that information. That's what I talked about last time, right? I got to show for you, Maisha, all the ways that I came up with this conclusion, where you can see don't just say, okay, well, yes, I see that 70% of people support multiculturalism. No, motherfucker. Let me see your questions. Like once this question is like, yeah, so I shouldn't pick on this example, but it's relevant. We had a survey last year where it was like, what are the percentage of students that use the library? And it was like 82% students use the library every day. Do y'all think that what we're trying to find out is how many people use the library, man? Or how many people actually sit in the library? No, that's not what we were really trying to find out. What we were really trying to find out is how many people are using the library for academic purposes. That's what we wanted to know. But the question was, how many people use the library daily? All types of people use the library to go up there and watch like highlights on ESPN. All types of people use the library to go on Facebook. All types of people use the library to go on Twitter. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if we're trying to get accurate information, we got to ask the questions a lot more effectively. Like, so it's not just enough to say, hey, we can ask people that, but then the next question be, okay, when in the hours that you spend in the library, how do you use it? A, to go on social media, B, to do this, C, to do this, D, to do that. Because that will help us really get information. Instead, we can just say, hey, 82% of people are using the library, but then I come to class and students have no idea of like how to go about getting resources and stuff like that. So we got to be very mindful about how we set up our questions. It's so incredibly important. A little bit more, Ron Anderson.
Gotcha. Another reason self-reports can be inaccurate is that they often ask participants to report on thoughts or behaviors from the past. And people's memories are very prone to error, particularly if how they feel now about things is different from how they felt to the past. To minimize this problem, psychologists have developed ways to reduce the time that elapsed between an actual experience and the person's report of it. For example, some use interval contingent self-reports, in which respondents report their experience at regular interviews, usually once a day. Researchers may also collect signal contingent self-reports. Here, respondents report their experiences as soon as possible after being signaled to do so, usually by means of a text or special app. Finally, some researchers collect event contingent self-reports, in which respondents report on a designated set of events as soon as possible after such events have occurred.
Good. We'll come back to all of these later on, but again, right, so self-reports are a general category. There are many different types of self-reports, and the author gave you some examples in that section there. Now, and I want to just tell you some of my own personal research biases, Michael. Like, there have been times where I have used surveys, but I'm generally not a big fan of survey research because again, people are not always the best arbitrators of their own behavior, unfortunately. And then, like I said, sometimes like people lie, or they may give answers that they think that they want the researcher to find, as opposed to just behaving naturally. So in my view, the best way to understand anybody's behavior, again, don't just, I'm not just going to ask you again if you're truly my friend, Ron. I'm going to observe what you actually do. Let's look at observations a little bit more. Continue on, Mr. Anderson.
Observations. Self-reports are but one tool social psychologists use to measure variables. Researchers also observe people's actions. Sometimes these observations are very simple, as when a researcher notes which of two items a person selects. At other times, however, the observations are more elaborate, as when judging whether someone is actually acting warmly or coldly towards another person, and require that iterator, that is iterator, right? Yeah, iterator, is that iterator?
Yeah.
Okay, iterator reliability, right? Require that iterator reliability be established. And then
say that 5 times fast, Ron.
That's a lot of R's.
It is.
Iterator reliability refers to the level of agreement among multiple observers of the same behavior.
Good. Good. Like I said, right, the mind plays tricks on us all the time. It can't just be, okay, I see it this way and Michael sees it this way. There are going to be some issues that are like that. What we want to look at in science, Ron, is what are we all looking at and see? What are we all looking at and seeing? Like, look, so some people could say there's no racism. People could say there's no institutional sexism. That's great that you have that perspective. Let's look at some data that we can all look at and make some intelligent conclusions based upon that. Continue on, Ron.
All right. Another point, my bad.
You good?
Is that kind of, iterator reliability, okay? Isn't that kind of like what juries do? Like they got to all be on the same page? Not necessarily, as like deep as researchers, but, when it comes to make a decision, it's kind of like, are we all on the same accord? Like, do we all see what's wrong with the situation in a sense?
Great question. It should be, but juries are not very scientific. It should be because juries be going in there and they see like a lot of what they see, and do your own research on this. There's been a lot of research done on that, is that your personal background has a huge impact upon what you see. Jurors, and for anybody that may go to law school, you'll find this out. And I got you 1 second, Jakira. You know what a lot of times, what lawyers spend a lot of time focusing on? Who to pick for the jury. And there's a lot of psychology behind that, right? So in a Trayvon Martin case, we not gonna put too many I ain't finna put too many black males on this jury. Now, yes, you may look at the facts, Ron, but the reality about human nature is that your background as a black male is gonna impact how you see that information. Now we can ask this, so we're gonna ask questions. That's why they ask questions like, Michael, how do you feel about the police? I hate the fucking cops. Fuck them dudes. Okay, we're not gonna put you on a jury, sir. Oh, Jakir, your father was a former police officer. Okay, we may put you on the jury. So, unfortunately, there's science in selecting a jury, but the jury's decision making, oftentimes is not very scientific at all, quite frankly. In many ways, there are many people like myself that would like to I'm not gonna say. I was almost gonna say I want to ban juries, but I don't. I think that the defendant should have the option, more of an option about whether or not they have a jury or a judge trial. There are some jurisdictions where they do, but not always. Jakira McLeod.
I was gonna make a point, just as Ron did, but maybe it's in the same, sense that he was looking at it. I was gonna talk from like a organization, maybe like looking at membership. They're gonna, observe and see like what type of character you portrayed since your years here, to, pick you as the right candidate. So we're looking at, okay, does this person, goes to class, or how is this person adapting to college life, or the service or things of that nature. But maybe it's in the same sense as a jury, but still using some type of psychological things.
Absolutely. And again, these measures are not always perfect, but it does help us to understand a lot about understand and predict a lot about human behavior. No question about it. A little bit more, Mr. Anderson.
Got you. The last sentence after that definition. Only when different observers agree can the data be trusted.
Good. It's
Again,
not
only when different observers agree can the data be trusted.
It ain't enough for me to say that. It's not enough for me to be like, okay, yes, there's disproportionate violence against Black people. Like, I have to make a case and show that and persuade other people that this is factually true as well. And the best way of doing that is not to try and convince them, hey, I'm right. Look at this document, look at all this research for yourself, and you can draw your own conclusions. That's how scientific research is supposed to be. Continue on, Ron.
Got you. The advantage of observational methods is that they avoid our sometimes faulty recollections and distorted interpretations of our own behavior. Actions can speak louder than words. Of course, if individuals know they are being observed, their behaviors, like their self-reports, may be biased by the desire to present themselves in a favorable light. Therefore, researchers sometimes make observations much more subtly. For example, in experiments concerning interracial interactions, researchers may record participants' eye contact and seating distance to demonstrate biases that would not be revealed using more overt methods.
Good. So you may ask us, you ask students, and I've seen this before, like teacher at NC State, like, hey, do you have a problem with integrating with students of different races? And they will put on a survey, no. When they choose their seating in classes, how do you think they will usually sit?
Always segregated. It's always Black and white. And I can personally speak to every class I've had in high school, unless we had assigned seats. The Black people stay with the Black people and the white people stay with the white people. And not necessarily tension, because we was all cool in high school. Maybe not now, because motherfuckers can't show their true colors. But it was kind of like, you stay with who you comfortable with,
Right.
Yeah.
So in that way, right, and people don't even know that they're doing this. Like I believe it was Malcolm X would do this. Like he would give a speech and he would say like, okay, look, I want all the Black people on this side, all the white people on this side. And oftentimes they barely have to move. And he would use this as an example, like, look, everybody say they want integration, but like, look at what we do amongst ourselves. And people are not always constantly thinking like, hey, I'm going to go. And sometimes we might. I know there have definitely been situations in spaces I've been in my age. I'm like, okay, where the Black people at? Okay, cool. I'm gonna be over here. But more times than not, it's a very subconscious thing. And you're right, Ron. It's based out of like people just wanting to be around people that they feel more comfortable with. And we may need to unpack the psychology of that, but it may not just be tied to racism in particular. Go ahead, Maish.
I was just going to say the same thing. Like, when we walk into certain situations, or you might go like, for a job or anything, and when you look, it's like majority white people, you like, dang, where that one Black person at? And then when you find them, you like, you got to be friends with them because y'all the only like Black people there.
Absolutely. And again, there are times where there are exceptions. Like when I was in Northwestern, I definitely took very careful notice that like it was like literally could count on one hand the Black people that was admitted into our class. So I definitely was noticing that. But and that will be like the initial kind of like connection. But after a while, like it actually like blended more into like our personal interests. So like a lot of the Black people that was in that program, they was kind of lame, for like lack of a better term. So like it was some white cats that like we just clicked and stuff, in a way that was different from like, like shit. I want to go to class and stuff, but I still want to go out and party and have a good time and stuff, man. And some of the Black kids that were in that program were like, I'm gonna go home and study and read it. I'm gonna go to church on Sunday and like, okay, that's great. I'm gonna go see what these other cats is on. Now I couldn't go and totally get down like some of them white cats on my should. They'd be going to get it in every night. I couldn't do all that. But our interests oftentimes, like, so me and one of my white homies, we still cool to this day. Like, so he liked to hoop a lot. So we started playing ball and stuff like that. And like, we clicked through that. So, but you're right that that ideally, that usually there is some type of racial or even gender connection. If you're in law school and like you're the only woman, even if she's a white girl, Jakira, like y'all are probably gonna link and click a lot more than like, some of the dudes that may be on campus. More recently, Ron.
Technology. Social psychologists use more than merely their eyes and ears to observe their subjects, of course. Various kinds of technology are used to measure cognitive and psychological responses, such as reaction time or heart rate, levels of particular hormones, or sexual arousal. Eye tracking technology is used to measure exactly where and for how long participants look at particular parts of a stimulus, such as a face or a video of an interaction. More recently, social psychologists have begun opening a window into the live human brain, fortunately without having to lift the scalpel. Brain imaging technologies take and combine thousands of images of the brain in action. These images can show researchers what parts of the brain seem to light up or show increased activity in response to a particular stimulus or situation. For example, although participants in the study may show no signs of intergroup bias on their self-reports or through easily observable behavior in the lab, their patterns of brain activity may reveal very different emotional reactions to a picture of someone on the basis of their perceived group membership.
Good. So very quickly, so look, it's a lot to unpack right there before we get ready to go for the day. So we talked about, Michael, before, applied research. So one of the reasons why, like we talked about diabetes and stuff like that being really commonplace in Black communities. And one of the things that we've been able to learn through science is that like sugar is very addictive. And in fact, when you consume sugar, Maisha, it be doing certain things to your brain. So much like, again, like, so things that give you pleasure, certain foods, certain activities. So Shakira, like when you're running, it ain't just your physical body that's changing. Like there's something that's happening for your brain. So for me and Ryan, it may not do as much, but for somebody like you, that like, you get a lot of pleasure from doing that, you can probably see this in your, like, again, people jog for that reason. It ain't just exercise. It's to get certain pleasure things in their brain. Again, drugs will do that. So we know, right, again, when you consume sugar, it be doing certain things in the brain. So in this way, right, a lot of times when somebody just can't stop eating sweet foods and stuff, Maisha, we think that, okay, this person is weak, they're undisciplined. No, it's not just that. There is something chemical, again, drugs themselves. There is a chemical reaction. Understanding that chemical reaction and that stimulus, Jakira, allows us to better solve the problem. Because again, it's like, okay, well, just don't eat. Well, just don't, like, no, like we need to understand. So there could be things, Maisha, that we can do that can still give you that pleasure center in your brain, which is important, that maybe can be less harmful. We talked about before, like racism. You ask most people, are you racist? Of course, no, I'm not racist. But we can look at your brain and we can see what happens when this Black person walks in the room compared to this white person. When I put up on the screen real quick, this Black image, what happens with your brain? We talked about pulse. Does your heart rate speed up a little bit, Michael, when I show this Black image on the screen? What, like, again, it's been all types of research studies that have examined that, and it helps us understand racism and all types of psychological things. Because again, the person may be really thinking that they're telling the truth, right? No, like, hey, my husband is Black. Of course, I'm not racist. But your body is reacting in a way that suggests there's something going on there. There's some variable, like your heart rate isn't just all of a sudden going up for nothing. There's some variable here that's causing your heart rate to go up. And it seems like in this experiment, it's only Black faces that be doing it, dog. What's going on? Comments, questions before I get to the last section.
I do have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
The book that you're reading from is not the book that I'm pulling up. So could you possibly give me the course code? Because when I looked on the syllabus, I used the numbers at the bottom, but it pulled up a different social psychology book.
Okay, for sure. Okay, I will make sure that you get that shortly after class. All right, so the final section again looks at test and idea. Well, not the final section, but we look at descriptive research and the things. Again, I'm not going to go over this now. I hope to Black Jesus, y'all read this over the weekend. And we began to look at how we discover trends and tendencies. That when we're looking at science, Ron, it's not enough for us to say, okay, this happens over here. We want to look at patterns, what normally happens. Again, we talk about observational studies. Any basketball fans in here by chance?
Yes, sir.
So Maisha, there's this concept in basketball, right? Like that. So any hooper, like particularly on the formal level, that the ball don't lie. What this speaks to essentially, Michael, is that if you get called for a foul, but you know I didn't really foul you, the universe is going to come in and make you miss one of them free throws. So that's been a myth. Like, you know, and so when somebody, they'll be at the free throw line and they'll miss, it's like, see, the ball don't lie. As karma catching up with you, dog, you know you didn't get fouled, man. I ain't even touched you. Research has been done, Michael, to study this relationship. Now with technology, we can go back and look at every single play in the 2010 NBA season. We can look at every single play. And we can go back and look, as I do sometimes, and I be watching games. That's a bad call. That's a bad call. I don't know what the hell you're looking at right here, dog. And we can see how often was the percentages higher when it was a legitimate call or was a lower call. Let's see what the research showed. One particular interesting study, Jakiri, involved NBA basketball games where Haynes and Gilovich wanted to see how often professional players missed free throw attempts in cases when they were awarded the shot because of an obviously bad foul call against the other team. The researchers were testing the idea that when players benefit from an obviously bad call by the referee, they subtly, even unknowingly, may be troubled by the sense that they were awarded something they didn't deserve, leading them to be more likely to miss their free throw. So again, the subconscious brain, you know you didn't really deserve it, Ron. So there's something that just throws that form off a little bit. How amazing is the brain? Like, think about this, man. So the researchers, so I'm going to go down a bit. The graph compares free throw success rates for the average NBA player that season, the season average for the players including the study, the first shots after a bad call, and the second shots after a bad call. As you can see here, Ron, we've got the data here. We're talking about thousands of plays. They shot way worse, Jakira, after a bad call. Just craziness. So look here, right? I'm going to dig into one more thing before we go for the day. I'm going to leave y'all to read the rest of the chapter on your own. But I want to dig into something before we break for the day. Are there any questions? Before I go into
I just got a statement, really,
yes,
everybody. Sir. Everybody just make sure, writing assignment 1 is on e-learning. So just make sure you're aware of that and, start reading that.
Please.
That's it.
Good luck.
All right, so look, writing assignment 1, as Roger spoke about, you should see it here. What is today's date? Anybody know?
The 28th.
What's today's date?
January 20th.
It is. This assignment is due on March 2nd. How many pages is this assignment? Can anybody see the screen? How many pages?
Must be no longer than 4
pages.
So 4 pages, black people, between now and March 2nd. Y'all think y'all can manage that or not?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Especially as I assure you, you're not going to have to do this by yourself. Let's look at what your task is for this assignment. Thus far, Maisha, we have discussed a variety of methods in this course specifically and in the social science program more generally. Your assignment, Ron, is going to be to submit a 1 to 3 page summary of no fewer than 5 research methods that were covered in chapter 2 in your own words. Does anybody recall any of the methods that have been described here today?
Yeah.
Tell me something.
We talked about self-reports, which is a category, but then an example of that was the Rosenberg self-esteem scale. That was one.
Good.
Then we have I literally just threw myself on track. My bad.
Applied research, basic research.
Yeah.
Say it again, Michael.
Applied research and basic research.
Incorrect.
We just had
We looked at observations, but then we looked at how people use technology to monitor the cognitive responses.
Good, but the observational is the method. Again, what all these are looking at are how do we go about answering the question. So, basic research and applied research is not a way that we go about getting the answer to these research questions. So how do we answer our research question?
Surveys.
Good.
Does the other types of self-reports count as well? Because there was signal contingent, event contingent, and interval.
Good. I'm looking for that level of specificity, Ryan Anderson, for this assignment.
Okay.
But again, if we read this stuff and we're not clear, like again, the purpose of reading this was to make this assignment a little bit easier. Y'all got some of the answers there from it. If you forgot anything, the good news for you is this lecture is being recorded and will be posted shortly. The summary should include, now here's the tricky part, right? You got to come up with a research question and a hypothesis of your own. You got to come up with a research question and a hypothesis of your own. You have to come up with a research question and hypothesis of your own. And in this assignment, you're going to explain for me, Maisha, how you would use each of these methods to answer a pre-approved social psychological research question. As with every aspect of this course, this is not a journey that students have to trek alone. You have to take time to actually read up on the methods here in chapter 2. You got to make the time to do that. But then I do not expect you to have, to be experts in this through one reading of the chapter or even 2 readings. That's where I'll come in and I'll help you, but I'm not going to be able to help you if you don't understand what you're trying to accomplish here. Again, the methods are what allow us to answer our research questions. So I want you to begin to think about a research question or hypothesis that might be of interest to you. And if you're struggling with that, again, we can talk that out during office hours. So I'll help you with that too. So by next, again, you can submit unlimited amount of rough drafts of this assignment. You can begin submitting them as soon as tomorrow. And I'll give you feedback on it until you get a 15 out of 15 on your paper. But you only get until February 21st to do that. Ron Anderson, it sounded like you had a question.
I just want to clarify. Right here it says the summary is doing a hard copy form. Is that still applied since we
great question. No, you would submit it on the coursework section on e-learning.
Gotcha. And you said that we can submit rough drafts to you like via email, or do you got a spot we would do?
No, okay. You can. The rough drafts email me directly. The final draft will be submitted in coursework on e-learning. Gotcha. Good questions. Are there any questions about what you're trying to accomplish with this assignment?
No, sir.
If any other questions do come to mind, which I imagine that they will, and that's okay, please let me know. Again, this assignment, Michael, is not designed for you to do it by yourself. If you try and do it by yourself, you're probably going to do it very poorly. If you try to do it by yourself, you're probably going to do it very poorly. If you try and do it by yourself, you're going to do it very poorly. I repeat that for a reason, but your help, again, I'll be more than happy to help you, but the help is going to be most beneficial, Jakira, if you ask for help early on. Don't wait until February 18th to start asking for help, okay? Start on this. We only covered a few methods. They're going to give you a few more in the sections that I did not get to today. Start on that and be prepared to explain some of those methods when we meet on Tuesday. Any questions before we go? Have a wonderful afternoon. And I'll send you that. I'll send you all the course key, the correct course key in a moment.
All right.
All right. Peace, Black people.